Hello. All right, there we go with some of our things. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Amigos Club. This is the large Latinx club on Clubhouse. So I'm excited that you're here. And today is going to be a very special day because we're going to be talking about how to be coexisting with a narcissist, especially if they're a co-parent or also, we're going to be talking with a couple of guests that might be coming in. I'm really excited to be introducing them. They have experience with narcissistic abuse, and this is what they do. And I just wanted to create a space where my amigos here on inside the Amigos Club could ask them questions, get some tips, get some advice if this is a topic that maybe you have a co-parent that you feel is a narcissist, or perhaps you think that your own parents were narcissists, that you can get some tips and advice and help and elevate our community here on the Amigos Club. So with that being said, welcome. And I'm going to go ahead and start introductions and we'll go ahead and get started. I am Kristina Campos. I'm founder of The Impactful Parent. I help parents of school-age children turn their chaos into connection with their adolescents. So I specialize specifically more between the ages between 6 and 16. And I have a free app that you can see the link right above my head. This is primarily how I help parents. It's an app where you have a free to access, free to download, available on Apple, available on Google, on Android. And I add new parenting education videos inside of it all the time. And my videos are short. I know that you're busy parents, so I try to keep them somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes if I can. Sometimes they run a little bit longer, but sometimes the topics are really big. And that's basically what I do. So I'm going to move on. I'd like to introduce Sally. Sally, go ahead and introduce yourself here, and I'm going to be modding people.
Perfect. Thank you so much for this space. Looking forward to this conversation. My name's Sally, transformation coach, helping women thrive after narcissistic abuse. I was in a marriage to a narcissist for 20 years, didn't realize what it was until 5 years before I filed for divorce. So I really, I have two kids, a 13-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter, and just learning to live with that. I've been out of the marriage for 2.5 years now, so looking forward to this conversation. Thank you so much for this. Very important. Back to you.
I couldn't unmute myself. Thank you, Sally. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad that you're here to help our community. Dali, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Because
We can hear
it keeps
you.
going in and out for me. Okay, perfect. Hi, everybody. I am a parenting coach also who specializes on bullying awareness and prevention education for parents. And I'm really excited about today's topic because I know a little bit, and it's definitely something that I think we need to educate ourselves about because we do usually have somebody who is a narcissist within the family, and we need to learn how to manage those relationships. Thank you. And up next, I believe, is Rodrigo.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Rodrigo. I am a certified mediator here in the state of Texas. I mediate here locally in San Antonio, Texas, and in Houston, Texas, and also via Zoom. I'm also a co-parenting coach and consultant. I have two boys, 17 and 21, and they have two moms. And using my experience, my enthusiasm, and my education, I help folks navigate the tricky waters of co-parenting. This is a fantastic topic. I'm really excited to have Sally and Nikki here because this is a real topic, y'all. I think a lot of times we tend to think, folks are this or are that, but we have experts here. They're going to help us identify signs, whether it's in our co-parent partners, our partners, or our children, or maybe even ourselves. And so it's going to be a fantastic conversation. I'm really excited. With that said, I definitely going to pass over the mic to Nikki G, who will introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Kristina, for letting us grace the stage with you again. The last one we did was amazing. So thanks for welcoming us back. Sorry, a little tongue tied. It's Friday. But I am Nikki G. I am a certified trauma recovery coach, and I help survivors heal from narcissistic abuse, spiritual abuse and religious trauma, and cult involvement. I am also a survivor of multiple narcissistic relationships, tons of spiritual abuse, and a former member of multiple cults. And so, I found myself saying, hey, after the last cult, something's up. I need to figure out what's going on. I'm tired of all these toxic relationships. And so, kind of spent some years, if you will, working on me, not just understanding and educating myself on the abuse that I had endured, but also certain patterns and belief systems that I had developed that kept attracting me or being attracted to, I would say, these type of relationships. And so now I help survivors to reclaim their autonomy after all that type of abuse, find their voice, find their song, be able to know that they can turn the page in their lives, and what they've been through does not have to define the rest of their life. So I am grateful to be here, and I am excited about today's topic. And I'll pass the mic back to you, Kristina.
I am excited to get started, you guys, because I know we have a lot of questions. And so, welcome again to the Amigos Club. And this is going to be a discussion. It's an opportunity that if you're resonating with what this topic is about trying to either co parent or you maybe had a parent that you felt as a narcissist, this is an opportunity to raise your hand, to come on stage, to ask questions to Sally and Nikki. And in the meantime, as we're waiting for people to raise hands and ask some questions, also please share the room down below. That will help us get more people in here that might be able to benefit from this topic, because we do want to help people. That's why we're here, to elevate our Latino community, but in general, just to help everybody. So if you can share the room, that'd be very, very appreciated. Let's get some people in here. And I'm going to start off actually with a question to Rodrigo and Dali and say, because we're doing this under the Amigos Club, and this is Hispanic heritage place for us. How do you feel narcissists are in our, specifically into our Latino community? Do you feel like they're more prevalent, maybe not so much? Like, I just kind of get your first ideal thoughts. I'll start with Dolly.
That's a really good question, and I wouldn't say it's prevalent in any one type of demographic. That in Latinx communities, it is super super rare to have a discussion like this, or to even know what a narcissist really is. It's, I think it's spoken even less than just overall mental health. So that's what I think. Thanks.
Rodrigo.
That's a hell of a question. I've never even thought of it in the context of my own culture and folks and whatnot. But no, I don't know. I don't know. I don't suspect that it's any more pervasive or in our cultura than in others. So yeah, that's my initial thoughts. That's a good question though.
Yeah, I mean, I was wondering just because I feel like there are certain things that are, of course, available in all cultures, and there are other things that are a little bit more predominant in certain cultures, I believe. So it's just a question to throw out there. But let's start off with Sally. Will you give us just a quick, very quick rundown of what narcissistic characteristics look like, so we can just define what is a narcissist, so we can move on to like more the depth of the conversation.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And it's different because they wear different hats depending on where you are in the phase with them, as far as the relationship. So at the beginning, they're going to be everything that you ever desired, your answer to everything at the moment. Whatever you need, that's what they're going to fill. And they're going to do that for a while until they have you hooked. And I call that like the honeymoon phase, right? And then slowly over time, you start to realize They're really not there for your best interest, and it's confusing. So I would say somebody who doesn't celebrate you, who always needs the spotlight, it's always about them, and you're not a concern. Anything you're going through is never their concern, and whatever you're going through, theirs is always worse. And then one more thing is a heaviness. It's a heaviness that they try to put on you, something that they're lacking, something they're upset with, but they transfer it to you and make it feel like it's your problem. That was a huge thing, taking on other people's heaviness. And you'll probably witness that if you're in a room with somebody. There's always a certain darkness that you feel when these people are around. So I'll share that to start with. Thank you so much. Back to you, Kristina.
Nikki, do you have anything to add with that?
Sure. I know before I go into some of the characteristics, I know that there's some people that are on both sides of the fence in society right now, where some people are like, well, everybody's a narcissist the way society is labeling. Like, if someone has a disagreement with somebody, that means they're a narcissist. And so some people feel like it's overused. And then for the survivors who have really been through the abuse, they're like, it's not highlighted enough. And we're hoping that though there's been more the word is being used more, that it doesn't get drowned out and the survivor's voice and what they've been through gets overlooked. This is a horrific form of abuse. It is not like an abuse, if you will, where you have physical scars. If I got shot, if someone hit me, God forbid, and Sally sees me, she sees I am injured. I don't have to explain to Sally that something happened to me. I don't have to, go through the motions of hoping that if I tell my story well enough, she'll believe me, and she can help me get some help. But with narcissistic abuse, it's undercover. You don't see it. It's like internal bleeding. And for survivors, a lot of times they try to figure out how to explain it to people well enough so they're believed. And the reason why is because the type of abuse that is incurred, a lot of it is psychological. It's emotional. It is verbal a lot of times, and it can get to a physical level, but a lot of it is psychological. It affects our brain, it affects our nervous system, and things of that nature. And so this is an abuse that needs to be taken a whole lot more serious than it is. But I digress with that. Some of the warning signs, some of the things that you can see, okay, is this person potentially a narcissist? First of all, narcissism is on a spectrum. There are some people who have certain traits, narcissistic traits, that we would see in relationships with them. And there are some people that actually are on the other end of the spectrum and they have the personality disorder. When it comes to them having that disorder, usually a clinician would have to diagnose that. And so herein lies the problem sometimes, because people say, well, I feel like my husband or my wife or my parent was a narcissist, but they've never gone to go get checked out. They're not going to do that. And that's the hard part. Most narcissists will not go to be evaluated. They will not seek help. So it's hard to find if they actually have more than just the traits and actually have the disorder. But some of the things you usually see with these type of individuals, there's a grandiose sense of importance. They feel like they are God. They act very godlike. They feel like they know everything when you're around them. It's like you can't have your own opinion. They'll shoot it down and believe their own press, if you will. The need for attention. They like to have people around them that will basically worship them or always singing their praises. If they don't have that around them, and basically that's feeding their supply and their need and desire for validation themselves. They don't like to take responsibility or accountability for the actions or the different things that they've done to others. Instead, they will find a way to highlight a weakness that you may have, and they will project that onto you, and you wind up walking away from the conversation, taking on the blame, scratching your head, and saying, "Wait a minute, did I do that, or I know that they did thus and so, but they're telling me that it's my fault because of what I've been through with my father." And so now you're sitting there and you're confused. A lot of confusion happens for people who have come out of narcissistic relationships. You find yourself ruminating. Oftentimes, you're driving in your car, washing your dishes, and you're rehearsing conversations you've had with them, trying to figure out, was it me? Was it them? Is something going on with me? You feel like you're in a constant state of cognitive dissonance when you're around them. They need to be the ones controlling the narrative. They need to be the ones setting the reality in the relationship, in a situation. They lack empathy. So they can do all these things. They gaslight you, manipulate you, change and distort reality, but they don't feel that they're harming you. They don't feel the effects that they have on you, on your mental state, on your emotional state. They really want their needs met, and they could give up about how they get them done. And so these are just some of the things. There's so many different characteristics for those who are actually have traits and or the personality disorder. But the biggest things are kind of highlighting what Sally said, like, how does it make you feel when you're around them? You know, do you feel like you are not yourself? And oftentimes in those relationships, your identity starts to be chiseled. Who you are before you met them starts to change. You find yourself always having to defend who you are and defend how you think. And you start to feel your nervous system changes. So now you feel tense and a little paranoid around them because you feel like you have to be on guard because you don't know what they're going to accuse you of next. So again, there are a lot of different traits, but for sake of time, I will pause right there.
Thank you so much. You shared so much. I have so many questions, but one that I really want to ask first is, um, is there a cure for people who have these narcissistic behaviors? And I'm asking because I know a few people who have a partner that is definitely everything you described, right? And she's had this discussion with her partner, and he's, of course, like, hell no, that's not me. It's you. And, they pretty much gaslight her. So, is there a cure even with therapy? Because I've heard that there isn't. Thank you.
Sally, you
Go
want to
ahead.
take that first?
Yeah, sure. And excuse me, I'm out getting my dog right now, but I can always talk on this topic. My dog always breaks out. I would say there is no cure if they have the personality disorder. If there's some traits that they have, definitely probably can be worked on. But in my opinion, and what I've witnessed, hearing so many stories and my story itself, I would say no, there's no cure for the personality disorder. And then I'll pass it to you, Nikki. Thank you.
Christina, did you want to jump in? I saw you on mic earlier.
No, no, no. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. This is the hard part when it comes to this particular question, because when it's a romantic partner or things of that nature, we can kind of vacillate between, do they know what they're doing? Is there a cure? But when it comes to family dynamics and you have a narcissistic parent, the hope that there is something that can be done, the hope that they can change their behavior patterns in the way that they relate with others. It's we hope because we're in relationship with them, especially if you are a child of a narcissistic parent. However, this is the hard part about it. And like Sally said, when it's traits, there's a little bit more potential that there can be some type of help, but they would have to, number one, be fully aware and conscious of how they affect others, how they harm others, how they use abusive practices and behaviors to get what they want from other people. And I mean conscious where they're not faking it, because narcissists are great actors and actresses. They know how to pretend that they have empathy for you, but they don't. They know how to pretend like they're trying to do better, but they're really not. They're just gathering intel to figure out how to still get around new barriers that are being formed. So if they go to therapy with a partner and saying, yeah, I want this to work, because they see the partner starting to figure out something's up here and I don't like it and we need to get help or I'm leaving you. And, some of them will, say, I'm not going and da 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 da. But the ones that say they do, you still have to be careful because they're great actors. And they'll go to make it seem like they're being compliant and they want it to work out, but they will use a lot of your weaknesses against you in the therapy sessions. They'll use a lot of what you share in the therapy sessions at home when the therapist is not there to incur more abuse and more psychological damage. So, and those people that I've just described, they could just actually have the traits. Now, someone who actually has the disorder, they're probably not even admitting that they need to go to therapy. And how can you help someone that's not willing to help themselves? And how can you help someone that doesn't think that there's a problem to begin with? The slogan, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They don't feel like there's anything that needs to be fixed or corrected and things of that nature. And if someone has that mentality plus a disorder that's going on or traits that are so concrete that they've done this since they were young, it's kind of hard to actually help them better themselves. And this is why I tell a lot of my clients when I speak on Clubhouse and other places, I try to tell the person who's receiving on the receiving end of the abuse, spend that energy healing, working on recovering and healing yourself. Because until they come to the point where they want to do better, you're wasting your energy and they will use that against you. It is better to find how now can I heal and recover with and move forward in my life after the abuse. And I'm done.
I think you just had some amazing points, Nikki. And one of the ones I just want to reiterate is that a true narcissist will not see anything wrong with themselves. So, how do you help somebody who doesn't want to change? And that's really powerful. And I feel like everybody should know that distinction. I just want to reset the room really quick. Thank you. You are into the Amigos Club. This is one of the largest Latinx clubs here on Clubhouse. And today we're talking about having a narcissist in the family, just getting started. So, but this is a conversation. Please feel free to raise your hand if you're resonating with what's happening. If you want to ask a question to these amazing ladies or any of our mods at all, please do raise your hand, come up on stage and join the conversation, ask your question. If that doesn't make you feel comfortable, you're more than welcome to also put it into the chat, and we'll be monitoring that also. So, would like to welcome to the stage Jason. Thank you so much for being here. What would you like to ask?
There's a couple of questions. So, from what I was listening to, and actually I was reading about this yesterday, about the NPD, or narcissistic personality disorder, the traits and so forth. So, first question, is there an argument, is there any identifying arguments that what psychology is doing today for mental health in regards to NPD? And the second question is, how, if you're saying there's no cure, are you really qualified to really say that there's no cure? Because I think that's in my opinion, it may be objective a little bit, but it also is creating curiosity because I feel there are narcissistic personalities in a lot of families. And I think it comes from trauma dumping and trauma bonding, because like in our cultures, we identify like to do something better because I went through this for you or I did that for you, and it's constantly used, especially in Latino Latinx culture and famix, or you need to pay attention to me because you don't know how hard it is. So there's a lot of like questions that I'm not prepared. I'm not the professional to try to really dissect all this, but to get a better understanding, the first primary question is there really arguments within the mental health and psychology area to really truly be able to identify what MPD is?
Well, everything you said, like I really appreciate a lot of the points you made about the trauma bonding and different things like that, and I totally agree. I will say number one, I am not qualified to say there is no cure. I'm a trauma recovery coach, so I help clients deal with the trauma that they've incurred, not just from narcissistic abuse, but other forms of abuse as well. However, if you look at a lot of the research that is out there from psychologists and clinicians and the ones that actually do work with some narcissists, they will say it is a small percentage. I don't know that percentage, that number off the top of my head, but I believe it's under 10% of narcissists that actually are able to have some level of recovery where they are not actively abusing those around them. And even if they get to that point, it's kind of like they will constantly be reminded on a conscious level that they have to intentionally choose not to do that. A lot of them, it's so ingrained in them that it has to be intentionality as far as to walk some of those behaviors back. And I believe it's under 10%. I could try to get the number for you while we're in the duration of the room, but I don't know if I will. But if that is something that piques your interest, I would encourage you to do some research, and you will see a lot of psychologists and clinicians basically allude how hard it is for recovery. I don't know if you were here in the beginning of the room. I hail from a narcissistic family myself. And then I went on and connected with a lot of narcissistic relationships from my employers to my friends. And then eventually, because my family was also very religious, I found myself in multiple cults where a lot of those cult leaders were narcissistic, had narcissistic personality disorder. To me, at least, from the traits that from the way they treated people and the research I've done, I would say that as well. And so, does that make me an expert? No, I will not sit on the stage and say I'm an expert, but I have lived experience. And again, a lot of the narcissistic people who have traits, the disorder, it is very hard for them to get to the point where they want to recover. And so that is the hard part. Like if someone know that they had an issue with stealing, well, okay, they can admit, okay, I have an issue with stealing. Let me go get help. But if someone doesn't think they have an issue with stealing, they're not going to go get the help. And so that is the hard part. So I don't know if does that answer your question.
To the best ability I can understand you, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your question, Jason. I'm going to be inviting Carla up to ask her question also. And I wanted to just let you know, typically we keep everybody on stage for this one, just for time management and things. Once your question is done, I'm going to be putting you back down into the audience, but feel free to raise your hand again if something else comes up. So, all right, go ahead, Carla. What would you like to ask these moderators?
Hi, I this is for Sally and Nikki, so both of you. I'm currently recovering from a narcissistic relationship with my mother, so I went no contact, and it's been like 6 months. And at first, it felt like this is great, fucking wonderful. Like I don't have to deal with that stuff anymore. But there is a sense of grief and loss because obviously she's my mom, and I just wanted to know what the process of recovery was for you guys, because there's a part of me that loves her, and then there's a part of me that doesn't know her. Like I don't even know that she was real. um so just the what, I guess, what's the light at the end of the tunnel?
Oh, I can go with that one. So my relationship was in a marriage. So I know it's a lot more difficult when it's a family member. I've learned a lot from those who shared their stories with me, those I have coached to help through this process. But what I want to say is that heaviness that I spoke about earlier is a common thread through all these narcissists, right? It's they're dumping their stuff on you. They're putting their heaviness, their issues, they're projecting onto you. So I feel like the main thing that helped me as a empathetic person, a caring person, a people pleaser at growing up, um, is the boundaries that you put in place. Knowing that it's not anything to do with you. You are loving and caring, and you should be that way. But to help you is to put those boundaries in place where you don't take on their heaviness. Realize it's something they're dealing with. because a lot of the time, like I said, we try to take that on ourselves and it's not our issue. So like a high intention with a low attachment is what I always try to do nowadays, even with family members. And everything that I approach these days, I have the intention of helping people, loving on people, but the low attachment, that's your work to do. So that's helped me tremendously. I hope that helps you.
Yeah, thank you.
May I add a resource? Something that I'm actually listening to right now. It's a book, and you can listen to it for free using Hoopla, which is an app that's free, and you just link your library card to it, and you can borrow anything from that they have available on there. But the book is called Discovering the Inner Mother, and it is by Bethany Webster. And actually, it talks exactly about what we're talking about, healing from that trauma caused by a parent. And one of the things that I've read, because I've been going through this myself, where I have no contact with my mother, is that the grieving process is different for everybody depending on how deep the wound, right? But um, one thing to keep in mind, I think, is a healthy thing to do is to not put a timeline on your grief. And remember that there are different phases of grief, and sometimes you repeat part of those phases of grief. And actually, I want to even commend you for doing that, because there's a certain taboo around letting go of somebody who is very toxic, whether they're your parent, your partner, your child, any family member, but especially there's a higher taboo from what I've seen when you decide to disassociate from, to just leave that relationship with your mother. Because, people think like, oh no, whatever you do, you just can't not, you just have to have a relationship with your mother. But when you see that that relationship is just not a good thing for you, I strongly believe that you got to do what you got to do, because you can't live your life for somebody else, right? And it's not a selfish thing, it's a self-love thing. So that's what I wanted to share. And again, the title of the book is Discovering the Inner Mother by Bethany Webster. And
Oh,
I'm done.
thank you. Actually, Dahlia, thank you for saying that. You're absolutely right. I actually lost contact with my mom, and then after that, it was my entire family because of it.
Just to add to what Sally and Dahlia already added, and thank you for that, Dahlia. I totally agree with most of everything of what you said. I'm an African American woman, and there's a lot of similarities here from the family dynamic. Not just you have the societal pressures that you have to maintain relationship with your family, but mostly your mother, because you got Mother's Day, and I know the role of mother is heralded highly in society, but then depending on what culture you come from, it's even deeper than that. And I can relate with that desire within the family system that says no, you cannot disconnect with your family, because even if your mother, rather, even if you do that, then you have the aunts and the cousins reaching out and saying, hey, what are you doing? How could you do this to your mom? And when it comes to narcissists, and I think this would be apropos in a romantic relationship type narcissist and family, most people don't see what we see. They don't experience what we experience. It's hard for them to imagine the narcissist treating us the way that they've treated us. Narcissists, I say, oftentimes have two faces: the face that they put out to the public, the face they put out, to the image that they create for other people to kind of say, wow, they're so charismatic, they're so benevolent, they do so much for this family and that family, and people believe that. So they have a hard time hearing, no, my mom gaslights me. My mom makes me feel shame and guilt. My mom controls and manipulates me. She criticizes me. She's done this since I was little. My mom dismissed the intuition that I had about certain things. And I there are certain roles in a narcissistic family that are given to us, whether we realize it or not. Narcissistic parents don't say, okay, everybody come in the living room. You're going to have this role. You're going to have this role, and thus and so. That doesn't happen but there is energetic roles that are imprinted on us in that family system. Some of those roles look like the golden child. That's the favorite one. That's the one that's up under the narcissistic parent. That's the one that gets away with everything. Then you have the scapegoat, which is the role I had. I didn't know I was given this role, but that's the role that when the family does not want to deal with the dysfunction, when the family doesn't want to deal with the issues and the shame and the things that are in the family, they put it on the scapegoat child. And it's almost like, if I could give a picture, it's almost like the scapegoat role is like being a coat rack, and they throw the family's dysfunction, they throw the trauma. I think, like the gentleman that was up here was saying, they throw it on that scapegoat. And you're usually the scapegoat role, that person is very empathic, they feel pain, they feel the trauma, they see the dysfunction. And the narc doesn't like that. So the narc gets ahead of that child's ability to start voicing what they see is wrong in the family, and they start to chisel on their identity. They start to make them question what they really see and what they feel. And so a lot of this is going on in the dark. People don't see it. They just see that parent who was giving food out to the neighbors, that parent who was doing stuff for the school system and the children in the school system, and it's hard to believe. But when a person and a child of an adult child of a narcissistic family decides, I have to walk away from this, whether it's low contact or no contact, it is very grievous. It's a grieving process. And like Dahlia said, Carla, I salute you on your choice. Some people go fully no contact, some people go low contact. Sometimes it changes over time. But the thing that I would really encourage you, and I encourage clients and other people, is to take the energy that we would put into making to see if our moms or our dads would hear us and understand what they did to hurt us and abuse us. That energy that we would take to try to figure them out, take that energy and put it on ourselves to heal the wounds that we received from their narcissistic behavior. It is a hard road, and I say I kind of walk with a limp. I am low contact with my mom. And a lot of times with that low contact, I have to do a lot of gray rocking method. For those that don't know what that is basically, if I get a phone call or some type of correspondence from her, I am not putting my emotions in it. If she starts to go and ruminate and share a whole bunch of stuff and accuse me, I will shift the conversation and say, hey, what's the weather like over there? Oh yeah, I have to go. So you're switching the energy so they're not pulling you into having to defend yourself all the time, which gets you very, in a chaotic, energetic frenzy, and that's what they want, so they can continue to abuse. Again, there's so many different things to work through, but the biggest thing to me is coming back home to yourself, grieving that relationship that you wish you did have with your mom. We see our friends that may have relationships with their mom that are good and healthy, and it hurts sometimes. It hurts still for me to this day. But I grieve what I wish I had. I grieve what I had, and I let it go. And I learned to start parenting myself, which is not an easy endeavor, but is necessary if I am going to be healthy and whole and have a decent life going forward after the abuse. And I'm done.
And Nikki, I just want to say thank you so much for being vulnerable enough to share your experience along with Sally to everybody that's here. We are Amigos. This is the largest Latinx group here, and we're having discussions that elevate the community. That's the most important thing. And we have folks like Sally and Nikki and everybody that's been sharing their personal experiences. It really hits home how pervasive this is. And Nikki, I really definitely want to elevate a message that you said earlier, but that you're continuing with is that we need to recognize when we are victims and even habitual victims to narcissism. There's something that you said earlier in the discussion where you said, hey, I caught myself being involved in relationships with narcissists because that's what I was, I'm paraphrasing there, but that's what you were conditioned to accept, right? You're conditioned to accept that behavior because you're told that that's the way it is, or you see it and it manifests itself. And then you think, oh, well, this is just the way people are and so forth. And right now, you were discussing the relationship you have with your mother. I have a low contact relationship with my dad as well. And I made it very, I mean, super crystal clear what my boundaries are, what I'm willing to take, and what I'm not willing to take. And it seems, when it comes to folks who are narcissistic, they will always test those boundaries, and they'll always have an excuse to test those boundaries, and they'll justify their boundary crossing regardless of how you feel about it. And that was one of the first things that I realized my dad was a narcissist. When I would talk to him, hoping to just have a good time and talk and this and that. And the conversations would always steer about how my mom did him wrong, or how nobody treats him the way he thinks he should be treated, and XYZ. He never did anything wrong to deserve this and that. And it really culminated whenever he started criticizing my son, my youngest. My youngest is my youngest. I'm sorry, my oldest. My oldest, my little Rodrigo. He's 21 and he's gay. And my son, my dad, he knows that's a hard limit for me, but he still pokes the bear, right? He still wants to get his opinion in. And when you really identify a narcissist, they don't care about your boundaries, and you continuously try and try until the point where you come up to, like, to Carla's point, or to your point, Nikki, where you have to either have no contact or low contact. So I appreciate you bringing that up. The second point I wanted to make before I go ahead and welcome Hector to the stage, who we brought up from the audience. And again, if anybody wants to ask a question or have a comment, please come up. Sally and Nikki are here with us to answer these questions. They are experts on this topic. I'm here learning from them. But another thing that I wanted to bring up was the habits that we have of following people that are narcissistic. And I know that I fell into that when in my early years, when I went to college and so forth. That I ended up with somebody who was just like my dad, and it was mad frustrating years later when I figured that out. I was unpacking things with my therapist at the time, and she was like, and she just basically said, "Oh yeah, you married your dad." And I said, "What?" It was mind blowing to me, because at the time I was still kind of accepting those behaviors. I was with somebody else at that point, and a beautiful person. I wasn't dealing with that, but I was still dealing with the ramifications, the consequences of accepting that behavior, and even myself thinking, "Hey, if they act like that, I can act like that." So I think it's really critical that we identify ourselves when we are victims of narcissistic abuse, that we understand, that A, it wasn't really our fault, right? But B, what are we doing that maybe is attracting those behaviors, attracting those people, those personalities to us, and how can we avoid those pitfalls, so that we don't fall into that abusive relationship again? Because as Sally was pointing out earlier, it's unfortunate because these abuses are kind of away from the magnifying glass. They are not as perceptible as other abuses that occur in relationships, and I think it's critical that we recognize that. With that said, if you, Sally or Nikki, have any feedback on that, that'd be great. Otherwise, I can definitely turn it over to Hector.
Go ahead, Nikki. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say Sally or Hector can talk first, and then I'll add to what Rodrigo said.
Yeah, I just want to say with this whole thing, we are attracted to that type because it's like an adrenaline rush, right? But it's a facade. Anything that goes that long with that much energy is going to burn out, right? And that's exactly what I hear from a lot of women that have been in romantic relationships, is that they can't find that excitement. But if you think about it, that adrenaline is your gut telling you something's not right. You're on alert. And that what seems like, amazing, like excitement, is really just a warning sign that we need to be looked out for. So I picked that up in that story. We do resonate with them, and that's why it's so scary, and that's why you have to spread awareness so that we try to avoid being in these types of relationships. Or if you have to be in one, like in a family or out there in the workplace, they're everywhere. Just like I said, put those boundaries in place, and being aware that that's what's going on, and not allowing that manipulation. Thank you so much. Back to you.
As far as like some of the things that when we start looking at ourselves, and I think that's what I basically heard from you, Rodrigo. That is usually, a step that comes when people are really wanting to start removing that imprint and breaking those energetic patterns and cycles to narcissists. As I shared earlier, I continued to go from one narcissist to another, and then added the religious aspect to it as well. I was totally unconscious of how I was attracted to these type of people. I didn't understand, so it kept happening over and over again. And after the last cult that I was in, about 7.5, 8 years ago, I lost the community I was in. I lost all the friends. I lost, how I expressed my faith at the time. I didn't understand what had happened. And so instead of fighting that season where everybody walked away and it was just me, I decided to roll up my sleeves and embrace it, because I just was like, this can't keep happening. What is wrong? And a lot of times when we come out of relationship with narcissists, there's this silent, quiet season where we could either sit and face a lot of it and start working to heal, or we can try to absolve the pain and the rejection that we feel with another person or another relationship or another community or another what have you. And for people that do that, there's no shame. I just told you I did that several times. But if you lean into that season where it's not that many people to call anymore, you've made a choice to walk away from these relationships, lean into that time, you and take the courage, like I say all the time, and turn inward and go down that hallway from the mind to the heart, and start actually embracing certain behaviors that we picked up to survive. It is not our fault. What happened to us is not our fault, and I want to clearly state that. But we want to deal with the things that we have not cut loose yet, that keep us in repetitive, toxic, narcissistic relationships like that. One of the things that highlighted for me was in the narc family that I hail from. My mom oftentimes shut down my intuition. I said that a little bit earlier. So if I felt something, I observed something, I spoke up. It was like, no, that's not real. Oh, no, that's you. And after a while, I started to believe it. And so I attracted relationships where people would do the same thing, different body, same message. And after a while, I started to not believe my own intuition. I started to not believe the red flags that were saying, this person is not safe. This community is not safe. And that was happening simultaneously. I still wanted to be loved. I still wanted to be validated. I still had unmet needs from childhood that needed to be tended to. And I was unconscious of all of this. I didn't know. Once I started allowing this stuff to come up and I looked at it, I didn't run from it. I did want to. Now, let's be real, because it's very easy to look at what the narc has done to us, and rightfully so. But I took the time and said, if I'm going to break this pattern, I have to face it and give myself some courage to look at this stuff. And once I started looking at it, I said, wow, Nikki, this is how you're responding to this. This is how you're responding to that. And so once I did that, I started to learn, like, why am I looking for everybody to approve me and validate me? Why am I looking and attaching and, like someone said earlier, bonding with people when they have trauma? Why do I keep connecting with people who seem strong in their personality, but they wind up with manipulate, control, and abuse me? Like, why am I keep attracting to that? And I realized because I didn't realize how powerful I was on the inside. I didn't realize I had a wisdom box inside of me that was full of answers and intuition and beauty. It wasn't dark and nasty in there, it was beautiful in there. And once I found that and tapped into that, everything changed. I started to realize it's inside of me. It's not this person and that person. I don't need to codependently attach to someone because I need something from them. I can choose the relationships that I want now. And if you're right there in the room right now, no judgment. This is not coming at anybody. This is pulling the curtain back and allowing you to see what can happen On the other side of narcissistic abuse, you actually get to redefine your story, your life, and you get to see the beauty that was always there that they tried to cover up, that they tried to dismiss, and they tried to hide. So I'll just stop right there and pause.
Nikki, thank you so much for everything that you just spoke to. A lot of folks are commenting in the chat. Thank y'all so much. Make sure that if you can't come up on the stage, feel free to share on the chat, whether it's a question, a comment, or some resource or a link or anything you want to say. We definitely welcome that. Thank you so much, Nikki and Sally, for being here with us. With that said, we do have a couple of speakers that came up. Again, we welcome everybody up. As soon as you are done with your question, and we have a discussion about it, we will tuck you back into the audience so that we can bring some other folks up. But with that said, Hector, thank you so much for being so patient and kindly waiting. Do you have a question, comment, or some feedback that you'd like to share?
Mainly a question, but first I definitely want to say thank you all for setting this room up. I truly believe that these are topics that truly need to be discussed more and more in these times, mainly in the Western world, in my opinion. But in any regard, about 10 years ago, a little over a decade, I came out of a narcissistic relationship with my daughter's mother, and it sent me down another chapter, a new chapter in my life. Um, but what I am and really still do, I probably will for the rest of my life, is just feeding my mind and researching the topic, listening to professionals and YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things that I had come across fairly commonly, I'd probably say at least 7 to 8 out of articles or even professionals videos and such, that it seems like in this is where I would ask the question, it seems as if the narcissistic personality disorder has been almost stereotypically, almost sexist type of way geared towards always being men. And here, after I came out of that relationship and opened my eyes in such a way, and even applying that to my everyday life, I just met so many men and women that also talked fairly commonly about narcissistic mothers or women as well. But I just felt like as if that is not commonly what you see on social media and such, again, being discussed. And so my question is that anything that any of y'all have been experiencing or seeing? And if so, is there anything that we can do to kind of shed light on more of those truths?
Oh yeah, I definitely want to say, women, I've heard of the stories and I've seen my actual ex-husband's mother now realizing what was going on behind the scenes is narcissistic. Um, and women, oh, it can be, I don't want to say a million times worse, but it can be. They can play some mean games. So yes, it goes both ways. It really goes both ways. So thank you.
May I add something about that? So I don't know if the stats show that more men experience, having this condition or not, right? But what I have seen is in the media, when they talk about narcissism, they usually do it because the narcissist, who usually is a man, has also committed some type of violent act or something to alert the media. And because that, most of them are men who are featured, I think that gives the perception that it's mostly men. But now that you asked that question, I'm gonna look it up because that's a very, very good question. But yeah, that's my observation. That's all.
And she's really going to look it up. That's what Dali does. She
I
loves
do.
looking stuff up. Hector, did they answer your question, or does Sally, Nikki, is there anything else you want to contribute to
Oh yeah,
Hector's question?
I wanted to just add one thing. And Hector, thank you for coming up and sharing that. I'm sorry that that's your story. And when men come up and speak in the different rooms I've hosted or co-hosted with other people, sorry, my dog is acting up right now. But we try to make, myself and Sally have done rooms several times over the past year and a half. And when the men come up, we make space for them. Because unfortunately, Hector, you're right. Society does not make space for women who narcissistically abuse their spouse, their children, as employers at a job. I've had several friends, family members that this is their story, and their stories are not told or highlighted enough. I'm not going to name names, but there are many societal examples right now, if you follow celebrity news, where we can actually observe, not diagnose, that there are some women that may exhibit some of those narcissistic traits.
Agreed.
And right. And I applaud when the men speak up and say, hey, this was my story. But because it's harder for men to come out and say, that's why I honor you, Hector, because the shame that comes with that, other men would say, you let her do that to you, you're supposed to be the man. Why would you let her walk all over you like that? Like, where's your energy, your male energy? You're not supposed to allow a woman to do that, and your friends will laugh at you and your family members will shame you. And so if you're going through that as a man, you're like, where do I get community? Where is there someone that understands my story, that will validate my experience and help me to recover? And I'm just so sorry that presently this is how society treats situations, and the women unfortunately are more believed when they say, I didn't do that, and the men are looked down upon. I wish things could change. I hope things can change. Perhaps it will take more voices like you, Hector, and other people maybe in the room that will listen later, who are men that say, no, this is not okay, and this happens more than people think. So I'll just end right there, but thank you, Hector.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that, Nikki. Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head, at least from my perspective. And I think as a man, what even other men don't quite understand is, after digging in and doing the research, at first it was just narcissism. Then I realized and learned that, well, there's different forms of narcissism. Mainly, like, the probably two that come to mind for me were like overt and covert. And then I realized like the covert literally hit it on the head. And even as a man, even if you have a masculine man, the problem is covert is, it's essentially like a ninja narcissist. That's the analogy I always use. And if they're really good at that, then you're not necessarily just going to know without actually educating yourself on that topic. And I think a lot of men that are suffering with that need to hopefully learn that, so that way they can recognize it sooner than later. But with that, I pass the mic. I thank you all, and I do wish the best.
One more thing.
Thank you, Hector.
There may
Oh, no, go
there
ahead,
may
Nikki.
be some communities out there. I don't know if you've looked at that in your research. Some Facebook groups, I think. There used to be some men on here that talked a lot about that as well. I don't know if they're still on Clubhouse, but I encourage men, anyone who's experienced narcissistic abuse in any form, but particularly men, if you can find one or two guys that get it, or maybe not have experienced it, but they have the empathy to not judge you or shame you or ridicule you, keep those people around. Part of the healing from narcissistic abuse, particularly psychologically, neurologically, for our brains and our nervous system, when we recover, community is very important. Connecting with people that not only love us, but will have patience with us as we are healing, that won't judge us, that won't shame us, that don't, excuse me, that won't say, hey, this was 2 years ago. Why are you still talking about it? Why are you not healed yet? People that will not laugh at us and say, well, you're stupid. You shouldn't have stayed in that relationship. And the nervous system is like a drink of water when we connect with people that say, I've been there. I hear you. It's not your fault, and recover. Those people are just as important as all the research that we can do on the topic. I'm done.
This has been such a great room. I love this. Yes, and thank you, Hector, for coming up, for being vulnerable, and for contributing. I'd like to move on to Karen. Welcome to the stage. What would you like to ask?
Aloha, it's not so much ask as, first of all, compliment you. This has been a dream of mine. I just discovered this because
Hold
Zara
on,
down
Karen.
there.
Is everybody hearing her like I'm?
Can you hear me better now? Is this any better?
It's a little bit better, Karen. Thank you.
Okay, I'm on a noisy transport. I wasn't going to speak, but I'll make this faster. I'm glad to see this room here because our narcissism is global, and we need to recognize that it plays out a little bit differently in each culture, but in so many ways totally the same. Thank you guys for having this format. I had planned with my channel to start with the first language, which is having it dubbed in Espanol, Chinese, and German, and I thank you guys for this because it needs to be said. To wax Christian for a second, The Bible clearly says that in these times it's a separation of mother from daughter, mother in law from daughter, separation of wheat from the tares. So it's a rough thing to have to leave family behind, parents in particular, but it's necessary to do what you have to do for your own soul, for your own life's sake and misery. If you cannot go, no contact, planning that low contact, as Nikki said, uh, doing the gray rock, but also plan alternate things to do so that when things get really toxic and it's time to bounce and get away, have something already on standby for those special occasions or family dinners and someone acts silly or it gets too toxic, particularly holidays and things. Have something lined up for yourself and the children so that you don't feel just left out and empty and eviscerated after some cutting remark. You can save the day for yourself until you're ready to go no contact. And I land my plane. Aloha from Hawaii.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen, for being here. I'd like to go to, is it DJ? Or how do you say your name?
Hi, everyone. It's DJ. You're right. Hi.
Awesome. Welcome to the stage, DJ.
Hi. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Rodrigo. How are you? This is amazing. I think this is fabulous and it's on time. Thank you so much for having me on stage. I and Nikki, you well said. I have to give you your flowers. That is well said. I'm a type of person now is really putting out there. Know your worth. That's growing up in a narcissistic home and being Latina, it's been like generational curses thing. I broke that, guys. I had therapy and everything, and I'm running away from toxic people. I am by myself and I love it. It is fine. And you have to know yourself, and I appreciate you guys. I have a question though. I have a couple of questions. Now, I noticed that being a narcissist people out there likes to gravitate to empathetic people. I heard about that because I'm an empathetic. I love, I'm a giver and I'm a caregiver. And I like to know your thoughts on that, how they drawn on empathetic people so much so that we get blindsided. So I'd like to hear from the group what is your thoughts on that. And also another thing that I noticed even on Clubhouse, that you tend to ask people, they said about there's a lot of narcissist men in the room and also women, and they become very aggressive. And when you tell them they are that, they become very offended. So my question in the room, how do you want to tell people they are narcissist? You hear the characteristic in their voice, and you want to approach them. How do you approach a narcissist to let them know what's going on, and you don't want to deal with them anymore, but you want to let them know you see red flags, and you want to should you approach them or you should not engage in them? But I know you're not supposed to because they're not going to agree. But what is the best way to do so? I land my plane.
Ooh, I'll take that first one, and then I'll pass the second one to Nikki if that's okay. Approaching them, I'll take the first one. Empathetic people have these beautiful qualities about them that the narcissist lack. They lack empathy. They lack that ability to resonate with someone or feel for them. So they are learning to fake it from you. You're their source. You are their fuel. They get their facade from you. What you'll realize after being in a relationship with a narcissist for a while is that they mirror you. It's almost like you're arguing with yourself over time, and that's what it came down to at the end of my marriage. He was saying stuff that was me, but he honestly felt that was his thoughts, that was him. So they become a mirror of you. So I wouldn't say that you attract it. It's what they're looking for. They need that. They need a person that has these qualities that they lack. So I'll pass the second question on to you, Nikki, if that's okay.
Yeah, and to add to what Sally just shared, there is a codependent connection on both ends. The empathic person looks at the narcissist in the beginning. They don't see them as such. They go through the love bombing stage. And usually narcissistic type of people, especially in romantic relationships, they will attach very quickly to you. They romanticize you. Everything is quick and fast. And oh, that's what you like. That's what I like too. Oh, your father went to this school. My dad too. And then all this commonality. And the empath in us is like, wow, I found someone that, I really like. And we have so much in common. And so the euphoric feeling of attaching to someone like this with, and if they're like a spiritual narcissist, it's like, oh wow, they know so much knowledge, they have so much spiritual insight, I've been looking for that all my life, I finally found the guru that I've been looking for, or my spiritual parents, like wow. And there's an attachment very quickly. But what is happening is there is a power dynamic that's already being worked out subconsciously, and the empath person doesn't even know it, because once we start to connect, we start to see them, the way we see them starts to change, and we look at them like wow, like almost this godlike type of wow, which then creates the hierarchy that they know more than we do, or they're more this than we are, and now we look to them, as the leader, the guru, more romantic person. In that time frame when that's going on, what is happening neurologically is a codependent trauma bond sometimes, but a codependent bond is being formed. And it's not just for the empath, it's also for the narcissist. Narcissists don't know how to connect within. They don't like to go inside and look at themselves. Why? Because they know deep down inside, they really know they struggle with self-loathing. They struggle with feeling broken. They struggle with feeling that they don't meet the mark. They feel like they're inferior on the inside. So instead of dealing with that and working through that, they would prefer to create a whole nother image of themselves and work that out versus working on themselves. So they want you to attach to that image, but they need you to continue to worship them and think that they're all that and everything like that. Or if they're like, I'm broken, I got issues, and blah, 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 the empath in us is like, ooh, let me help fix you. Let me help heal you. Let me help take care of you. I'm sorry your father did that to your mom. I'm sorry you went through that relationship. That's horrible. Let me be the one to love you. So we have a need to be needed, and they have a need to be worshiped and taken care of and things of that nature. So that bond is formed. And I'm going to probably answer all your questions all in one. So what happens when you start to realize, uh-oh, what the hell did I just sign up for? What happens when you become conscious that this doesn't feel safe, this doesn't feel good, and you actually are at the point where you need to walk away? Now, everybody handles what they do, their exit strategy differently. But I always encourage people, you have to kind of move stealth with them. The worst thing sometimes you can do is tell them what you know and tell them what you see and pull up that real person behind that image that they don't even want to deal with. Because what can happen is a narcissistic rage can ensue from that narcissist, because they feel like when you highlight who they really are, they receive that as an injury. It's almost as if you stab them to them. So they get to raging. And when they get to raging, watch out. They will try to make your life a living hell. If not in that moment, they will try to do it years from now. Or if they say, you know what, I'm bored of you. I don't want you to be my supply anymore. I found somebody better. They may walk away from you and leave you and discard you after they tore you down, but they will always look at you as something that they own and that you are their supply. So they will continue to bully you and bother you even years after the relationship is over, because they look at you as their property. And so sometimes the best thing is to not even let them know you know what happened, that you figured it out. Sometimes the best thing is to exit without even giving it up. Now, part of us, the revenge part of us sometimes will kick in like, oh no, that's what you did to me? I didn't know then, I know now. No, I'm about to read you. But sometimes doing that will actually be more hurtful and damaging to you, your children, your reputation. Especially if people, I've heard of people that's married to a narcissist and they're in business together. And then they realize, I got to walk away from this. And that narcissist is now going to their clients and talking bad about them. And so it's a dance, and that's why I said it's different for everyone's exit strategy. But I would encourage you to take that information, learn from it, and work on healing, recovering, and getting away and getting to safety versus telling them what you see and you know about them. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, Nikki. I agree with you 1000%. 1000 plus and beyond percent. Thank you so much, guys, for sharing that. Exactly what I needed to hear. Thank you so much, guys. God bless you. And this is great. Continue. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution. I really appreciate that. I want to just quickly reset. You're in the Amigos Club, and we are talking about having a narcissist in the family. These lovely ladies here have some experience with that, and they're giving us lots of tidbits. We will be wrapping up the room at the bottom of the hour at the very latest. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and come on up. Now's your time to ask it before our room closes down. And while I'm bringing up Lupita, Rodrigo and Dali, do you guys want to explain the links linked up above?
Yeah, so there was some conversation earlier regarding some resources and whatnot, and honestly, Nikki and Sally are experts. I almost feel embarrassed that I'm pinning up a link of another expert when we have two experts here. But I saw these videos from Dr. Ramani, and she does a fantastic job in very clear language as well. Okay, folks, she explains the traits and the tendencies, and she has a whole list of videos on YouTube dealing with narcissism and how to spot it and what's going on there and how to all kinds of different types of videos. I really recommend it. I found her through a viral tweet that went out like maybe a year or two ago. I can't remember, but it was during the early stages of the pandemic, and it really just kind of helped understand even further what were the signs and whatnot. So when it comes to resources, this is one of the resources. Again, it's always great to just get the information from experts, folks that have done the studies, have done the research, have gone through the education, and can speak on this topic. But more importantly, even is the lived experience. Sometimes folks that share their personal stories, we connect to those folks because we see ourselves in those stories. And I know when Sally and Nikki are talking about their own experiences and being vulnerable with that, it resonates so much more with me because I see myself in those stories as well. When Hector came up and he was talking about his experiences as well, it just lets us know that hey, we're not out here alone. We're not tackling these issues by ourselves. There's other people that are also dealing with it, and that we can come together as a community to hopefully help each other. Find solutions and resolution.
Amen. And I just wanted to say, one thing that you do once you one thing you do once you realize what's going on is that research. It's overwhelming, and you become like you get your own PhD and in studying this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Because you have to understand it, because for empathetic people like us, we can't believe that people like out there exist, and Dr. Ramani is a huge help. So please don't feel bad about that. We've all been there, and helped us a lot as well. So thank you for that, Rodrigo.
And that's like it is kind of step one, because when you're fresh out of a relationship like that, you don't know what hit you, you're very confused, you need answers, and a lot of times you think it was your fault. And that's because of the messages that the narcissist programmed in you, or how they help to chisel on your identity. There's you're it's kind of like you got knocked out in the ring by Mike Tyson. No pun intended with what's going on this week. But anyway, um so you feel like you got knocked out and you need understanding. I definitely encourage people, get the education. I agree with Rodrigo, and no offense at all. I love Dr. Ramani and her work and the information. I had to do that when I first came out. I needed to understand what I was going through. And so the education is usually kind of step one. Well, step one is kind of like get to safety, whatever that looks like for you. Create some distance between you and that relationship, whatever that looks like. I know it's easier said than done, especially if people have children or if it's a family dynamic or financial issues, emotionally and mental safety more than anything. But after you get that education, it doesn't stop. But sometimes we can get addicted to that and we can stay locked in learning and consuming who the narcissist is, what their traits are, what they did, da 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 da, and we get stuck there. And education doesn't equal recovery. It doesn't equal movement on your recovery path. It just means we understand a little bit more and we get some validation, which is great. But then step two, or the next step, is to basically get to the point where you can walk down the hallway, open up that door that has your name on it, and sit with yourself, like I said earlier, and do that inner work. Do the inner child parenting that younger self that. For those who come out of a narc family, have really have gone through a lot, not skipping over that, because we can be experts at explaining and giving the information, but the hard work is what we do with ourselves. At the end of the day, recovery looks so beautiful. It's beautiful, the whole process, but especially when you can say, this is what I came out of, this is what happened to me. However, I have a relationship with myself now. I am learning to trust my voice and my intuition, because what abuse does is it steals your voice, it steals your creativity, it steals your song, and it disconnects you from yourself. It disconnects you from others. So now we don't even know how to relate with other people. And our nervous system now has to learn how to do that in the future. So it is imperative that in our education endeavors, we spread that out and add to that educating about ourselves and learning who we are. And it's not as bad as it seems with that part. Okay, I'll pause.
Thank you. And I'd like to invite Lupita on the stage. Welcome, Lupita. Go ahead and ask your question.
First of all, I just want to say thank you so much, Sally and Nikki, for being here. So much of what you shared, I know Rodrigo invited me up a while ago, and I'm just listening in, and I wanted to come on stage, but I was nervous to come on stage. And I think that with what you just said, Nikki, actually you touched upon what I wanted to ask. And it was that, how do you, because you mentioned, it was mentioned earlier about no contact and that that's the best way to go. And my question was, what if you do have to continue seeing this person? What if this person is a co-parent? How or what can you take, especially right after the divorce, right after, deciding that you no longer want to partake in this relationship? How do you deal with that? What are some practical things that one can do, so that way, because while you're going through your healing and then you still have to deal with this person, it can kind of distort, it has, at least for me, distort this idea of like, am I the bad guy? Am I doing this wrong? Am I the reason why this is all wrong? And so I think that right now what I'm trying to kind of understand is some practical things that I can do to be able to do my healing, but at the same time be a co-parent. I don't know if you guys have any tips, Sally or Nikki.
Sure, I'll go on that. And one I always say, Lupita, is getting whatever's in your head, those negative thoughts about yourself, or that somebody's told you about the situation, just processing what's in your head, because if you don't get that out, we could take on other people's heaviness, like I mentioned before. Because if you've been in a narcissistic relationship, that's what they're good at, right? Making you doubt yourself and that you have issues. And that's what we hear all the time when they pop in our rooms is, I wonder if I'm the narcissist. They're so good at twisting things around. So I would say do that check of where you are. Get some time by yourself and just process what's in your head. And I like to say, get rid of those negative and replace those with the truth. Once you have that truth, that's always going to back you up. It's intentional at first, right? Because once those negative thoughts enter, you have to acknowledge them, but then you know what they're there for. They're not really the truth, they're the lie. And then intentionality of replacing those, with the truth becomes habit over time. And that's what I would start with, just processing what you have in your head, what's lies and what's the truth about yourself. Thank you so much.
And to add to everything that Sally says, and I'll preface it with saying I have not experienced being in a relationship romantically with a narcissist. Sally was married to one, but uh, the around doses of rather of all the narcissistic relationships I hit, it's the same song. I know it's expressed differently in different forums, but as far as romantically, it is hard. It is hard once you realize you have to walk away and divorce, and then if you have children together and co-parenting, because then there is the, as a parent you're trying to recover, then you're trying to protect your children. How do I help my children, to be safe around this narcissist now that I know that this is what he's capable of or she's capable of? How do I work through this? And it is a journey. It's going to require us to roll up our sleeves and really be intentional. I won't say that every person who's received narcissistic abuse are definitely empaths. So I don't want to blanket state that, but a lot of us are. And as empaths, we move how we feel, that emotion, A lot of times, once you go forward and you have to co parent, some of that emotions, we're going to have to pull that in and we have to be intentional. My husband, his son, which is my stepson, his Sally, I don't know if you even know this, recently figured this one out. His ex is has some narcissistic tendencies, and the amount of times that my husband and I have to talk, and I'm like, listen, we're not emotionally responding to her. We want to just be tact and be cordial and say what we have to say. This is that, this is that, that's it. We're not arguing, we're not going back and forth. Don't get drawn in the chaos, because a lot of times that narcissistic partner likes to create chaos so that you can respond. Once you get pulled in that tornado, that chaotic tornado, now you're emotionally moving versus critically thinking and using the left brain, so to speak, to deal with them. And that's what they want. They want to say things that will really get you mad and get you riled up so that they can sit back and laugh and say, see, and you think you're the good parent, and you think this is not your fault, and you think you weren't the reason why we got a divorce. They intentionally do stuff to piss you off. And so I know a friend of mine who co-parents with a narcissist, and instead of that person's name on her phone, on her contacts, she put gray rock method. Remember gray rock, or don't go in emotionally. So when he called, she would see a visual reminder to herself to say, because they want your energy. They want to pull you in. And once you're pulled in, if we're not aware of that, we can just respond off of anger or frustration, and rightfully so. But when we do that, we're giving up ground, we're giving up power, and that's when they feel like they thrive because they know what they're doing. Whereas sometimes it's hard for us to realize what they're doing. So a lot of it is intentionality to say, I will not be emotionally pulled in and dragged into what they're trying to create. I'm going to stay focused. As far as your children, and I think the room we were in before with Kristina and Sally and a friend of ours, Vanessa, was on stage. We try to encourage people. The power of love is so great, and I don't think we as human beings really understand love and safety. And children look for that. They may have to go to that parent as you co-parent, and they may have to go over there, and they may hear messages from the narcissist. You can't necessarily do anything about it unless the court, worked it out where they don't see their child, but they're going to have to see their child. But when they come back to you, you instill love, you instill hope, you let them know that they're safe when they're there. And it's not even something you say, it's the energy that you give them. They know when they come home to mama or daddy that there is safety, there's stability, there's love, there's structure. You pour into them who they are. You allow them their autonomy and to grow in their own voice. You don't shut everything down. If they observe something with the family, don't dismiss it. Lean into it. Talk about it with them. Obviously, as far as it's appropriate, dependent on their age. But we treat them not just children who don't know what's going on, because trust me, they feel the back and forth. They feel the tension. They don't have the language. Honor that they feel that and love them through it. And when they get older, they're going to remember where love and safety was. They're going to be able to discern. And not that you're trying to have them be pit, put both parents and compare them, but this is a matter of establishing safety within their nervous system as children so that they don't have to incur a lot of the backdraft of abuse that we did being in the relationship. So I'll end right there. Hopefully that helped, Lupita.
Thank you so much. It really does, and just seeing you guys and the work that you do kind of gives me hope. So thank you so much.
Can
And I just want to thank you as well. Sorry, I'll make it really, really quick. I posted the link to the book up there, but you can find it anywhere. Amazon. Like I said, Hoopla, the free app to read any books or borrow anything from a library. You just link your library card to it. And one thing that I wanted to add, because I love what Nikki said, right? The making sure that your children know that your place is a safe space, and they'll be able to tell which parent is the reliable and loving parent. And not to say that I guess narcissistic people are not loving, it's just that they love differently, right? And Oh man. Oh yeah. Oh, I almost lost what I was gonna say. One thing that since I'm a bullying educator, I wanted to mention that uh, this can happen not just with adults doing it to children or to other adults, but it happens in bullying. And in case you hear this term in schools, um, it's called the indifferent bully or the relational bully, and those two type of bullies use a lot of the behaviors of narcissism in the way that they bully other children. So keep an eye on out on that as well, because it does happen with children who have narcissistic traits, and it's important to let the kids know. I think it was Nikki that said they're trying to get your energy, and one of the ways that you don't let them take that energy is by sometimes responding with a question. I did hear that not responding at all or ignoring them can sometimes increase the intensity of their attacks. But so I'd like to know if Nikki or Sally happen to know if that's true, or if there are other ways that kids can respond to a child that is narcissistic, that's bullying.
I love that. And I so relate narcissism to a big bully. Really, I do. And I feel like this whole situation with my kids, now that they're prepared to deal with not taking on the heaviness. I'm going to keep on saying that because that's what bullies do as well. It's something they're going through. And I've always tried to strive to tell my kids that if somebody's mean to you, it's something they're going through. Don't take it on personally. And I do tell them to walk away most of the time. I'm not sure if that's the right thing. Maybe there's a different way, but I don't give them any energy, because any in with a narcissist lets them give you more. So I would still say walk away. Maybe Nikki has a different perspective on that. Thank you so much for that, though. So important.
No, I mean I agree with both you ladies about the similarities, with the bully and the narcissist, because that is part of what they do. Um, but I'm sorry, I forgot the question. I'm blanking out. What was the question
The
again, Dahlia?
well, the it's Dali. And
Sorry,
the
Dahlia.
question is no problem. It is that I have heard. This wasn't one of those news interviews. I've heard that when you ignore a narcissist attack,
Mm-hmm.
that just intensifies their attacks. So I just wanted to know what do you
Ah,
know
okay.
about that? Yeah, and
Um,
is there a better way to respond?
Again, it depends on the narcissist you're dealing with. For some, that will be a form of safety for you not to respond, and they don't, start to be enraged and start, acting crazy. But for others, um, that could set them off. I like what Hector said in the chat. He said business transactions, and that's how you have to look at it. And that's why I said earlier, as empathic people who have been in narcissistic relationships and that abuse, we have to be intentional to kind of remind ourselves to not emote in this situation. Remember, as empathic people, we feel everything, not just what we're feeling, but oftentimes we feel what everybody else feels and forget about what we feel. And so we have to be intentional to say, not that we don't feel, but that the left brain business transaction idea is what we're kind of moving in with when we deal with them. And so, not speaking to them, not replying, they could take that as you rejecting them. Remember, as much as they bully, they are very fragile on the inside. They are very, very sensitive, but you would never think that, because remember I said they have two faces. So the image that they portray to everyone is they're self-confident, they know everything, they got their life together, that they don't ever feel depression, or they don't feel like they're like something would bother them. They don't experience rejection because they got it all together. But that real person, that other face, they deal with it a lot, and they don't like to be reminded that that real person exists. So if you do ignore them and you don't reply, it could cause them to start to act irate and to be revengeful and say, all right, I'm gonna get you back. But at the same time, this is where it's an energetic tussle, because sometimes you just have to do it and just let the chips fall where they may. Other times you have to just say, no, I'm going to take a boundary. You said you were going to pick up our child at 3:30. It is now 1 o'clock and you're showing up at my house because you want our child now because it's convenient for me. I will bring our child down at 3:30. If they keep, no, you need to bring them down now. No. And then situations like that, you may not respond because you already told them what you had to tell them. So it is kind of a case by case situation. It is a situation by situation, how you want to handle it. But giving them everything that they want only emboldens their ego, only emboldens that entitlement, because they always want the control. They're used to it. Even though that they don't connect with you that way, they still feel they can get it from you because you were once their supply. And in their mind, once my supply, always my supply. That sounds really nasty, but that's how they view you. So, we're going to have to put our hats on and be intentional on how to deal with this. But the key is safety, peace, and you honoring your boundaries above all, and obviously what's best for your child. So I'll end right there.
Nikki, thank you so much for sharing that. I absolutely love that, and what Hector was saying in the chat is so applicable. I actually give that out as advice to my clients as well. That these are transactions that we're doing, and it's funny because in my practice, I do encourage folks to use parenting apps. There's quite a few parenting apps that allow co-parents to discuss things and to handle these interactions through the app. And I never really made the connection here, but it's so crazy now just looking back at the clients that I've had and the people that usually want to refrain from using it, and it's the folks that always wanted to have control in that co-parenting relationship. And it's unfortunate, but it is exactly what it is. They're usually the first ones to say, like, oh, we don't need an app. No, we don't need an app. Oh, come on, we can just talk about this and that. But the thing is that they relinquish control. And that's really what the whole basis of most of the arguments are. And it's really enlightening to hear that, that conversation happening right now with us, because that's exactly what occurs. And then one final point that I wanted to make was when you were talking about how these things happen, as far as the communication and your kids noticing, that love. I almost felt like you had read my book, like my personal story, because I've shared my story before, and that's exactly what I had to do with my oldest. Where there was a point where my son was not talking to me because he was improperly influenced, and I just had to stick it out with love, and I had just to stick it out and go. My visitation time was 6, just like you said, Nikki. She, my son, and she would say, "Well, hey, he's not going to be available." I said, "Look, there's a court order. I'm just following the court order. All I got to do, all I want you to do is follow the court order."
If he doesn't want to come home with me, that's fine. And that's what I did. It occurred for a year, and finally, he started coming around, and it's to the point now that my son doesn't talk to his mom, and he realized everything on his own. And yes, it is a patient trajectory. It is a long haul, but when you do that and when you act out of love and you give your children agency, I never talk bad about his mom, but he slowly started seeing those patterns. And when he decided to move out from his mom's house, I mean, it was a whole mess. And now, unfortunately for him, he doesn't talk to his mom. He has a very, very small relationship, and says, I just talk to her whenever I absolutely need to. And it's sad because his mom and I had that same relationship. In my and I'll end right here. In my phone contacts, when you were talking about your friend, in my phone contacts, I have her listed as take a breath. That's exactly what I had to do. We did not communicate at all. I tried to minimalize it, but whenever I saw that text come in and whenever I saw a phone call come in and it said take a breath, it always reminded me, stay detached. Don't get emotional, because that is exactly what I was happening to me. I was getting emotionally hijacked, and my son was the pawn. It was so sad looking back at it, how my son was used that way, and now he's dealing with those ramifications. He goes to therapy. He talks about it with his therapist, and we have a fantastic relationship, and it's unfortunate that his mom and him have a poor relationship. But at the end of the day, he's making that decision. He hasn't been influenced by me. I don't, even when he starts talking bad about his mom, I refrain. I just say like, well, hey man, I'm sorry, man. Well, have you talked about this and this and that? He goes, Dad, that's my mom. You know her. You left her. Da, da, da. I'm like, hey man, that's between her issues, between her and I, are our issues. But everybody needs a mom. And he goes, well, I don't need my mom right now. And for my son to come to his own terms for that, I wouldn't say that it made me proud in the sense that he's not contacting his mom, but it makes me proud that he's taking charge and ownership of his own well-being and recognizing the damaging effects that unfortunately his mom led him to have, and what he's dealing with there. So I just wanted to thank you, Nikki and Sally, for just sharing y'all's experiences, and to highlight how dangerous and really how generational narcissism abuse can occur, and how we have to put it upon ourselves, unfortunately, to really help stop that by drawing these lines, these boundaries, and making sure that we detach ourselves from that control that they're trying to impose. Just wanted to thank Sally and Nikki for all that y'all spoke on, because it really hit home for a lot of folks, especially for me, but I know with a lot of folks, especially because of the back channel communication I'm getting, and also the chat that's going on.
I just want to say thank you also. We're going to be wrapping up the room now, and I couldn't said it any better. So I'm not even going to try with Rodrigo, because that was a wonderful way to end our room. And thank you for being here. We really try to elevate our Latino community here under the Amigos Club, and to have you guys here, it was just wonderful. And thank you for that, for those resources, for Dali, for Rodrigo, for helping me today, and pinning up links and doing all the things. It was an amazing room. I'd like to just to quickly, Dolly, if you have any last words as my another co-mod, and then we'll go to Sally and Nikki if they have any last things to say, and then we're just going to close it out. So thanks, guys.
I just want to say thank you so much. And don't forget that Kristina has a wonderful, wonderful app. You should check it out. The link is in her bio and her Instagram. And hopefully, we'll see you next Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern here on Clubhouse. Thank you.
Sally?
Sure. Just want to say thank you again. Any chance we can help spread awareness, I love being here and doing this. It's what it's about. So thank you for this space and allowing us to share today, Kristina and Dali and Rodrigo. Good seeing you, and we look forward to the next one. Have a good day.
This has been great. I enjoyed the first room. Enjoy this even more. Thanks for welcoming us into your community to hear what it's like in your experiences. And like I said earlier, there's a lot of similarities I find from some of the stories that you shared. The whole intergenerational part that Rodrigo was talking about, and the family dynamic as well. And when I was talking about different parts of healing, talked about education, talked about connecting with you. But then there's another room sometimes that we might have to approach eventually when we're a little bit stronger in our recovery part, which is the intergenerational trauma that happens. I mean, like I said, I hail from a narcissistic family. One of my siblings has a lot of narcissistic traits himself. And then my daughter, I was a single mom for a while. One of the first cults that I was a part of outside of my family, that cultic leader is my daughter's grandma. So she doesn't even see her other side of the family. And it's been like that for years, because it was just chaotic. So you can see how it's been weaved all through my life. So, you know, I am working towards getting to the point where I can do videos and speak and things like that, like some of the experts out there. But, and with that, because defining experts can be like subjective. There are some experts that are out there, the knowledge is amazing, but they have no heart for survivors. Like, they look at survivors like, oh, you got caught up in this, well, let me just monetize off of your experience and your trauma because you need to know. So I encourage people to be careful where you read, what you read, and what you listen to. It's one thing to read and listen and get the information, but even here on Clubhouse, I think somebody talked about that earlier. There are a lot of rooms on narcissism and different things like that. Pay attention to the energy in those rooms. Don't get so caught up, so to speak, if a person has certain acronyms before their names or after their names. At the end of the day, do they empower you as a survivor? Do they honor your story? Or are they making you feel invalidated because this was actually your experience? I want to encourage people. Sometimes the experts aren't always the ones that have those acronyms and the knowledge. It's the ones that have the heart. And at the end of the day, safety is one of the most important needs that we have after the abuse that we've been through. So I just want to throw that out there. But I love Dr. Romney and everybody they put up. And Dali, I'm going to get that book that you shared. I think that sounds like an amazing book. But I just pinned the link above. This is the club that I host on Sundays here on Clubhouse. It is called Spiritual Abuse and Cults. We talk everything from narcissism to spiritual abuse, religious trauma, and cults. We vacillate between the different topics. I know that sounds like a tall order, but it's a nice community of people that come together, share their stories. We're not judging where people may find themselves on their paths right now after all of that, but it's beautiful energy like it's been here in this room. Kristina, my hat goes off to you. How you run your rooms are amazing. The other mods, amazing. But the work that you're doing to help parents with their children to parent better, because Rodrigo talked about it. Others talked about it on the stage. I shared my crazy story and all the narcissism I've been through, and we see the pattern: family, intergenerational. And right now, there are many dark narcissists all over the place. I think uh, uh, Karen said it earlier, it's global. So we can't fight it necessarily on that level, but it starts in the home. It starts how we raise our children. It starts, do we give them everything? Do we always give them everything with no structure and no boundaries? Because then they feel entitled when they grow up and they start to relate with other people, like, you need to revolve around me. Or do we give them love and empathy and voice and boundaries and structures, and teaching them to honor not just themselves, but how honor other people and how they relate with others is just as important. So, Kristina, thank you for the work that you're doing. Working with parents and children is not a small order. It's one of the biggest, in my opinion, because everything we see in society, it started in someone's home. The leaders that we have in society, it started in someone's home. So we have the ability as parents to make or break our children. And we're not perfect, but I think the more resources we can connect with, like Christina's app, And the information, Rodrigo and Dali, what you guys do on your end, it is important. It's valuable, and I appreciate being able to share the stage with you. So if anybody wants to hear me ramble some more, click on the club. You can send me a DM if you have any questions or anything like that. I will be hosting a room Sunday. I just have to schedule it later. But hopefully I'll see some of you later. Thanks so much for listening in. And I appreciate this community.
Thank you guys for being here. All of my mods, I'm so grateful. What an amazing room today. Rodrigo, Dali, and I do come back every Friday at noon Eastern time to host a parenting room that will help you in your parenting journey. Next week, we're going to be talking about options after high school. And this is another really great room because in college, university, it's not for everybody. And there are other options out there. There's actually several. So we're going to talk about some other options after high school, including the university and college and community college options. But hopefully, and then Dali will be talking about a military option. As she has military experience, you'll be able to, again, come up, ask more questions. And hopefully we can help you in your parenting journey. But that's what we'll be talking about next week. And just everybody, thank you so much for being here. I hope that you come back. Click on all of our heads, follow us here. Click on the little casita above. Make sure that you become a part of the Amigos community. This is my favorite community on Clubhouse. I just love this space, and it's always really good energy of elevating our community here. So join us. There's a networking room that happens every morning, both in Spanish and in English. Check those out. You get to know a lot of the people who are in the club. And I think that's about it for me. Dali, Rodrigo, anything else? Otherwise, I'm going to close out the room. Thank you, guys.
Bye,
Now,
everybody.
bye, everybody. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Sally and Nikki, for joining us. And I hope everybody has a great start to their weekend.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Enjoy. We'll see you next week.